Eileh told us Noach. These are the chronicles of Noach, or these are the children of Noach. Noach is tzaddik. Noach was a man who was a tzaddik. Tamim, haya. He was complete. I mean, it seems to be redundant. What's the difference between tzaddik and tamim? Tzaddik means his actions were all righteous. Tamim means his qualities as a person, his quality of character, his midos. Two things. First can be a tzaddik, you do everything correctly, but in terms of the behavior pattern, the quality of person, it's another thing. He was tamim haya b'dorosav. Let's see Rashi. Noach. If toldos means the chronicles or the children, seems to be we're digressing. We speak about Noach, his toldos, his children or his chronicles, what his life's all about. Then we digress and we speak of Noach being his tzaddik. He's the most complete in all his generations. Then it continues as Noach, and Noach walked with God. And then afterwards, we get back to with the opening statement that Noach fathered 3 sons, Shem, Chom, and Yopes. So Rashi, famous Rashi, which is based on the Midrash, hold this kiro. Since Noach is mentioned as a person, sipe b'shvacho, we speak about his praiseworthiness. What's that based upon? Shenemar, based upon a pasuk in Mishlei in Proverbs. Zechat tzaddik livrocho. Whenever you mention a tzaddik, you have to mention him within the context of blessing. He has to be quantified, he has to be classified, to be able to understand who this man is. Because that's the primary characteristic of a person, of what he is. Davar acher, lo me'chika toldos shel tzaddikim masim tovim. That the primary accomplishments of a person is his own personal good deeds, his accomplishments on a personal level. First, let's talk about Zechat Tzaddik Livrocho. I'd once mentioned the name of Ravina Bachya. We speak about Hashem is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, stands for what? Haya. God was, is, and is in the future. So Ravina Bachya asks a question. If God knows that tzaddikim ultimately they can meet every challenge, every test in the future, why does he have to bring tzaddikim into existence? In terms of a person, if he fails in life, God cannot punish a person unless he was given the challenge, he had the ability to succeed, and he chose to fail. As the Rambam says, Shuva, a person's always in a position, he go in either way. You go to the right and do the correct thing, or you do the wrong thing. Whatever you do, it's your initiative. So to punish the person who does the wrong thing, he's not able to punish a person unless he's crossed the line in the wrong direction. But the tzaddik, and God knows the tzaddik will meet the challenge. Why put the tzaddik through all the challenges and the turmoil and the difficulties of life? He should allow him to have a share in the world to come without going through all the challenges, because he knows he's going to meet the challenges. So the simple answer to that would be, if without Ravina Bachya, you would say, because when you meet the challenge, you grow from the challenge. So you're only able to meet the next challenge because you met the first challenge. Meaning this, Avram Avinu was tested with 10 tests. If Avram would have been presented with the 10th test initially, could have withstood that test? Probably not. It's a gradual level of development. You meet one test and you get another level of clarity. Now you're ready for the next challenge. And you go from challenge to challenge. And as you meet challenges, you become a totally different person as a result of what? The experience that you were able to meet the challenge. The example is always given. A person is young, and he doesn't have the maturity of a person who's well-weathered in whatever field it is. Once you've been out there, and you've had many experiences, because only of the early experiences, the future experiences are contendable. But if you wouldn't have had the first experiences, to have that level of experience, of expertise, you couldn't have achieved what you achieved in the future. The same thing in regard to life. Initially, you don't know what's coming down the pike. But once you realize, and despite the lack of clarity, you made the right choice, so now you're ready to make the next choice. But if you wouldn't have made the first choice, the second choice would have been too difficult to make. As a result of that, the tzaddik exists because every time he's here, every challenge he meets, he's empowered and has the ability to meet the next challenge. Rabbeinu Bachya says something else. He says, what's the basis for choice? The basis for choice is always this alternative. You have two things presented before you, now you have to make a choice. If you'd have only one thing presented before you, there's no basis for choice. It's the only thing to do is to do what you say. The middle of the road person, if the tzaddik wouldn't exist, the context which he is of his life, he has no choice. Now he has a choice. He has two classifications of people. He has a person who's a tzaddik, he has a person who's a rasha. Now the question is, which way do you go? Do you live high on the hog? And you don't sufficiently value what the tzaddik represents, or you have an understanding that ultimately what the tzaddik represents is something which is real and correct, and you pass on the material because you realize the pitfalls of the material, that ultimately it doesn't lead to anything which is of anything substantial, anything of value. So the tzaddik, you need the tzaddik to be able to make the discernment between good and evil. If you have a person's a tzaddik, Noach, he survived the great flood. He had 3 sons, but we don't speak about who he is. So what's the takeaway? I always used to say, you have Moshe Feinstein said of Tzaddik Levrocho, a man that was 5 feet tall. He had a beard. He wore a black coat, a black hat. And if you didn't know who he was, that he had written thousands of responsa, that the man was a Torah giant on many levels, you wouldn't be that impressed. He looks like a righteous man, that's about it. But to understand his dimension of person, unless you know who he is, you don't know who he is. So the takeaway, in terms of his level of representation, you don't have that appreciation. Therefore, Shlomo says in Mishlei, Zecher Tzaddik Levrocha. When you speak about a tzaddik, you always speak about his praiseworthiness. You speak about who he is. Once you know who he is, then we understand why what follows because only because of who he is. Eileh toldos Noach. We speak about his children, his family, his chronicles, his experiences. But who am I speaking about? He's a tzaddik, tamim b'dorosov. Among all his generations, he was the most righteous. He's not an ordinary person. His levels of accomplishment is something which is beyond our understanding in terms of the challenges that he was able to meet. The other interpretation is, what are the accomplishments of the tzaddik? His good deeds. Those are his chronicles. In life, as much as you try to raise your children, and you want them to follow a certain path in life, but you realize everybody has his own choice and makes his own choice. You give your children the best Torah education, place them in the best environment, but after everything's said and done, they have their own choice. So you did your best, but regarding one's own life, everything is in your own hands. Therefore, what are toldos tzaddikim, the masim tovim? What are the accomplishments of the tzaddik in his life? It's his good deeds. Because only regard to your good deeds, as we say, everything's predestined in the person's life. But your own classification of tzaddik or Rasha, that's in your own hands. So what are the toldos of tzaddikim? What are the chronicles? What are the equivalent of the accomplishments? It's one's own good deeds. That tzaddik tom hoyevdorosov, that is totally determined by the person himself. V'dorosov. What does it mean? He was righteous in his generations. Some of the Chachamim, the Rabbeinu, our rabbis, they interpret this in a praiseworthy context. Here we see where he was in a generation where every level of influence was the most negative. And despite that, he rose above that. So you can imagine if he would have been the generation of tzaddikim, how much greater he would have been. Others interpret it on the negative side. Relative to, you mark someone on a bell curve, he's tzaddik. If he would have been in the generation of Avram, his classification of tzaddik would have been at a very paltry level compared to Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was in the generation where God was not known to the world. And despite that, he was able to achieve what he achieved. So if he be in the generation of Avram and you compare Noach to Avram, there's no comparison whatsoever. On a bell curve in Noach's generation, he was succeeded. He rose above. Now the question is like this. Both opinions agree on the reality that Noach versus generations, he was righteous. If he would have been in the generation of Avraham Avinu, his status wouldn't have been considered anything special. Nobody disagrees that. But everybody agrees that despite the negativity and the negative levels of representation of his generation, he was a tzaddik. So what are they arguing in? I mean, they're not arguing facts. They both agree facts are the same facts. I think they're arguing what exactly is what does the Torah want to communicate to us? To point out something critical of Noach, or something which is praiseworthy of Noach? We're not arguing facts. Factually, the generations were evil. He had no role models. He was special. Compared to Avraham Avinu, he would have been considered nothing. If he would have been the generation, there would have been other tzaddik who would have been greater, no question. So we're not arguing on the reality of the facts. The question is, what exactly is the Torah telling us? What does the Torah want the takeaway should be? Despite that, so if he would have been Avraham Avinu's generation, he would have been considered nothing. But despite that, he was what? He was something special. Even though it's on a bell curve, doesn't make a difference. I think this is the answer. It says, Hashem says to Avram, walk before me. It doesn't say Hashem held his hand. By Noach it says, Noach walked with God. Hashem says, walk before me. You walk independent. Avram says, it's God who I walked before him. Noach needed a level of support to be able to hold him up, not to be influenced by his generations. Avraham Avinu was empowered and continuously invigorated through his righteousness to keep advancing. There are two types of people. There's certain people that they succeed and advance, but what's the basis for the advancement? It's only to be the head of the pack. But once they're way ahead of the pack, most people plateau. Because what's the incentive to advance? The incentive to advance is because I want to be better than others, or I need the others to understand what is considered achievement. So we're not talking just ego over here, not ego. It's understanding, it's to what degree do you understand something? And once mentioned, the name of the Vilna Gaon, David Melech says, and it's a pasuk we say when we, after by Tkiyah Shofar, we mentioned certain psukim where the first letter of those psukim spell the words Kiras Satan. Destroy, tear up the prosecution of Satan. One, the sin of Satan is I rejoice over your words as if I've come upon great spoils. Right? That's the pasuk. So the Vilna Gaon explains it this way. In last week's parsha, Rashi cites the Chazal that Hashem had shown Adam Rishon being the father of mankind, all the generations till the end of the generation, till the end of existence. He's the father of mankind. He showed him a certain neshama, a certain soul that was very special. So Adam asks Hashem, what is the nature of this neshama? It seems to be very special. So Hashem says to Adam, the soul is only meant to live a few hours, then that child's going to die. So Adam initially was meant to live 1,000 years. Adam says to Hashem, I'm willing to give 70 years of my life to that child to be able to live 70 years. I'm willing to give my life, 70 years of my life. Whose soul was this? This was the neshama of David HaMelech. The reason why David lived exactly 70 years, he was passed away on the day that he was born at the age of 70, was because Adam had given 70 years of his life to David HaMelech. He was that special soul. You understand? Who was the handiwork of God? Noach, Adam was the first human being that was created with the potential by God. That means he was not the product of a man, but it was a direct product of God's creation. What were the value of the years of Noah, of Adam Rishon? You have a person, what he's able to accomplish in a month, other people can't accomplish in years. There's something innate in that person's ability which surpasses beyond anybody else. No, Adam being the first human being, his years had relatively unlimited potential. Adam gave 70 years of his life, which had this unlimited potential, gave to David. So David, in terms of his potential, his capacity, was something which is which is unequaled. And therefore David was that special person. David Melech Shel Chai B'Kayom. The Davidic line, the ultimate Bias Mashiach, comes through David. Because David's level of accomplishment within the spiritual realm is one of a kind. David. Because David's years that he was given, and it took advantage of that opportunity, of his potential, to become who he was. To be David Avdi. David was Avdi, he was my servant. That's who David Melech was. So David Melech says, I rejoice over your words as I've come upon great spoils. So the Vilna Gaon writes, in Hebrew, there are no synonyms. There are many words for joy. Dilo, Rino, Ditza, V'chedva, Sosa, V'simcha. Each word which connotes joy, it's a different level of joy. So the Vilna Gaon says, what exactly is Soso? Soso nochi alecha k'motzi shol. I rejoice over you in Rasecha as I become upon great spoils. What level of joy is that? So he explains it with a mashal, with an allegory. He explains there was a person who was a dedicated subject of the king. He brought much glory to the king. And the king says, because of your dedication, service, and sacrifice for me, I will give you a reward which no commoner ever had. I will let you go into my treasury, and you will see things there, which are the equivalent of a king's ransom, and I will let you be there for a short period of time, and you'll be able to take things as much as you want, only within that certain period of time. And after that, the bell rings, you have to be out of there. But you can see things which you're going to be amazed, because no human eye, other than royalty, saw these particular items of precious value and beauty and craftsmanship. But he says, I want to tell you something in advance. When you go in there, don't be overwhelmed with the beauty, because every moment you're there, you can take whatever you want. And if you're going to waste time being mesmerized with it, you're giving up something which has infinite value. He walks in there, he sees things, can't believe what he sees. But the words of the king ring in his ear, immediately starts grabbing and taking. And he takes things which have endless value. The bell rings, he's out. But he realizes, as much as he's fortunate he was able to take what he took, he realized there was so much more he could have taken. So he has joy, because he values what he took. But simultaneously, he's pained because he did take more and he's not able to take more. David HaMelech valued Torah, service of Hashem, to the degree there's nothing equal to that. But he only lived 70 years. If he could have lived more than 70 years, how much more would have he done? How much more would have he accomplished? I rejoice over your Torah as I've come upon great spoils. But even though I'm rejoicing, I'm paying because I'm not able to achieve more. Because if I'd live longer, I'd be able to do more. But unfortunately, I only have so many years to live and so many moments to live. That's the Vilna Gaon in Sosno Chav Kimotze Shoharov. Avraham Avinu, his advancement wasn't based on comparison to the others. I am what I am because I've achieved, my level of achievement is one of a kind. That was the motivating factor of Avraham. Avraham Avinu, he had an appreciation for what it means to serve God at a level that as long as he could serve to a greater degree, he's motivated. Avraham Avinu was self-motivated. It wasn't due to any external factors, not whatsoever. He was self-motivated because of the degree of appreciation he had for what it means to serve God. As it said, he came upon God by himself, despite everything. Noach, that's not Noach. It's the Elohim of Noach. He valued wasn't to the same degree. As a result of that, he didn't advance to that degree. Noach failed. The generation was destroyed. His merit only was able to save himself and his family. And that's the reason why the waters of the Mabul are called Mei Noach. It's the waters of Noach. He did not succeed. But why didn't he succeed? As I'm saying now, he needed that assistance. He needed the hand-holding because he didn't have a sufficient understanding as Avram had. And therefore, Avraham Avinu was self-motivated, and he advanced to the nth degree as long as he was alive. 10 generations from Adam to Noach. And then there were 10 generations from Noach to Avraham Avinu. But when we speak about Avraham Avinu, it says, Avram kibel schar keneged kulam. Avraham Avinu received reward, the equivalent of the 10 generations, that the world was not destroyed. And Rabbeinu Yonah over there explains that it's only worthwhile for God to sustain this existence. You have to meet a minimum amount of accomplishment. Noach, if he were personally compensated for the failing of the 10 generations from Adam to Noach, he wouldn't destroy the world. Because it's worthwhile to keep the world going because a minimum amount of accomplishment was accomplished. Noach did not meet the minimum. Since he did not meet the minimum, God pulled the plug on existence. We have to start over again. Noach and his children. Avram Avinu kibos schar keneged kulam, says in the Mishnah Pirkei Avos. Avram received reward for all the 10 generations. Because what they were meant to accomplish, he accomplished personally. And therefore, God did not destroy the world. So the world was not destroyed in the merit of Avram Avinu, and that's why he received reward, the equivalent of those 10 generations. So the question is why? Why was he able to succeed? And Noach did not succeed. And here we find he's faulted. The answer is because Avram was self-motivated. Because Avram had an understanding of what God was, which surpassed what Noah had. And therefore he was unstoppable. Avram was unstoppable. And that's why he was presented with the 10 tests. And that's the reason why he was given the mitzvah of Milo. He had the bris. And he became Avram, as we mentioned, name of the Chazal. The Boram in last week's Parsha, when God created them, he Boram are the letters of Avram. Avram Avinu, as the Maral explains, was the beginning of a new creation. He was a new entity of creation which did not precede himself. He was like that self-made man. He was an ex nihilo in terms of his level of spirituality, which he brought into existence. In the past, Noach is not a continuum of the previous existence. When Noach came out of that table after a year with his family, and the previous world didn't exist any longer, although there was vegetation and there were, in terms of the basic amenities of existence, they were there, but it was a new existence. It's not an existence which continues at a lesser level. This is a new existence. It's not connected to the first existence. Noach is the father of mankind now, no longer Adam. Why? Because that he was able to save himself and his family, that was due to his own initiative. The world, he didn't have sufficient merit. Therefore, he himself, that the world exists, it's purely based on his merit. And if not for his merit, he would have been destroyed with his family. Avram Avinu, the world at large, he baram. He's the equivalent of creation. Therefore, what is the world? The world is Avram Avinu. Because he picked up the slack, whatever slack it was. Why was the world not destroyed? Noach's world, why was it destroyed? It should have been destroyed. Because Avram Avinu met the challenge and met the minimum criteria of why God wills existence should exist for that reason. See. Okay, we just have a few more minutes. Just to end off just this thought that we're discussing now, tomorrow. Let's see the halacha.
So it took 1,000 years or more for Hashem to be revealed in the world after Noach. I mean, that's a long time. So it's what was happening during those, I don't know, 1,500 years. What was going on? Nothing.
Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin that during those, until Avram Avinu, the world purely functioned on chesed. Those generations were purely chesed. Why? Because they did not deserve to exist.
Hashem's chesed. Hashem's chesed.
Hashem's chesed. Hashem is willing to give them every chance. You could be that errant child, the rebellious child. Before the Mabul, you read the Gemara, it was unbelievable what happened. God gave every indication the world's coming to an end, and they didn't do tshuva. Instead of the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, the sun rose in the west and set in the east. He gave every indication the world's about to go to implode. It's not going to be anymore. And as much as he pushed the envelope, Hashem, they even became more rebellious. Until finally God says, I'm pulling the plug. He gave him every chance. We're going to read. It started to rain. And they still didn't do tshuva. And they told Noach, you go into that table, we're going to kill you, and we're going to destroy the ark. I mean, the handwriting's on the wall, literally. How do you not wake up? Right? I mean, today we're living something similar to that. The world society, the handwriting's on the wall. They're going off the cliff, the world, on every level. Humanistic level, economic level, every level. Where are they going? It's totally like a person has lost their mind, that's just driven and going off the cliff. Years ago, we used to watch pictures, in the movies, out in originally the West, the Wild West in the United States, they had buffalo. And when there was a crack of thunder, the herds of buffalo would stop running. And where would they run? They'd stampede and they'd run and they go off a cliff. They're going off the cliff. That crack of thunder, they have that fear, they go off the cliff. The world's going off the cliff. But how? How do you not see what you had compared to what you have now? Is it comparable? They don't get it. 20 generations, the world did not get it. God said, I gave you every opportunity to see it. You don't get it, it's over. And that was the story of Noach. Okay, let's see the halacha.
It's no coincidence that Avraham Avinu was born in 1948.
Alan, how do I read your mind so well? Okay. Oh, what coincidence, Alan, that I was born in 1948. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, we left off where I'm going to start is Shinu Test. We're studying the laws of Borer. Mishameres test. Mishameres afilu tlui be'er Shabbos. A person has, let's say, a filter, and he puts the filter over, let's say, a vessel before Shabbos, and now you have sediment mixed with wine, and you want to pour that sediment through this filter. So what's going to happen? The wine is going to seep through the filter, and the sediment is going to be caught on the filter. This is what we call the strainer. You have a strainer. You want to put something through the strainer, so the liquid goes through the strainer, and the inedible remains in the strainer itself. Okay. I feel totally bear Shabbos. So the strainer is put in place, and now you want to pour this mixture, the sediment with the wine through it, and then the strainer will catch the sediment. What about if the shmarim were there? The sediment was there, and the sediment itself has absorbed within it. It has wine, and by you pouring water over that sediment, it's going to extract the wine from the sediment. And it's going to go through that strainer, and you're going to have wine. You got it? If you have sediment with wine, and by putting it there, you're going to actually cause the liquid to drip, to separate from the sediment. That you're not permitted to do. But if you have sediment by itself, and by pouring water over the sediment, the water will extract the wine within the sediment. That's not a problem. That's not boring. Let's see Mishmura. Shemeres. Klishim sanim bo hashmorim. Vayayin zoch v'tzolo. It's a strainer that you strain out the sediment, and the wine is what is pristine. It's clear. Because you're extracting oil from solas with a kli, with a vessel, O mishum meraki, ein shom megamura. Slulim. Because after you pour the wine through the sediment, the sediment become no longer have the wine absorbed in it, and the liquid now is intermingled with the wine, and that goes through batam. Now the question is, why is that borer? You're extracting the liquid from the sediment, right? If you have the sediment mixed with wine, it's just a mixture, and now you put it there, and now it drips through. So you're putting it there is causing the separation of the sediment from the wine. But here there is no wine. There's wine absorbed in the sediment. And by pouring the water over the sediment, it's extracting the wine that's within the sediment. Shamayim who knows tzluim hem ve'ein bozeh dov shetzorch levar mehem mutar litein b'Shabbos mayim al gabi shmorim shnishu b'chovis v'koltin hamayim tamayayim. And by pouring the water on the sediment, which is left at the bottom of the barrel, now the water absorbs the taste of the sediment of the wine. What's in some Shabbos to show some manner. He's explaining what's going through the strainer. The water's going through the strainer. The water. And the water now is absorbed with the taste of what? With the taste of the sediment. But it's the same water. If you have water, you have wine and sediment. By putting there, you're separating the wine from the sediment. You're separating one from another. Here it's the same water. The water's going through, except it's absorbed with the taste of the sediment. That's the reason why it's not borer.
Rabbi, I don't understand though. If you're separating, I thought we talked about if you're separating good from the bad, then
With the cleat, with a vessel.
so is it the vessel that's causing this issue, or is it
Normally
if you were able
you're permitted to take essential from non-essential.
right? So if you were pouring that wine over your hand, and just as an example, and the wine would sift through your hand, but the sediment remain in your hand, would that be allowed?
Again, if you would take a lemon and squeeze it into a vessel, what is that? That's mefarik. You're not permitted to do it. No,
Mefarik means what?
extracting one entity from another entity.
But I thought you can put it in a salad though.
That's something else because when it goes, that's called ochel to ochel.
Okay.
That's ochel to ochel. Right? But
Okay.
if you squeeze the lemon into a vessel and now you have juice, you extracted a liquid from a solid.
Okay, but that's not borer. That's not borer.
It has a semblance of borer. It's called dush. Dush, that's like threshing. You're taking one entity from another entity. When
So
you
with
take
that,
the kernel out of the chaff, what are you doing? Borer is after dush. Dush is the kernel is part of the chaff, and when you separate it, you break it out, you're taking one entity from another entity. Right? Now you have a kernel from something which is not edible by separating it. When you have a food item and you squeeze it, the liquid, until you squeezed it out of that food item, it was all ochel. Its status was ochel. By squeezing it, now you've created liquid. So that's liquid from solid. That's dosh. That's mefarik. That's the equivalent of threshing.
I'm confused here. So what is
borer means you have two entities.
right? So what
And
is
you separate. No, when you squeeze a lemon, you don't have two entities. You have one entity. It's called food.
got it?
When you squeeze it, you're extracting something which was not what you're extracting before it was extracted. The juice is not called juice in the lemon. The juice in the lemon is part of the lemon. That's a food item. So by squeezing the lemon, you're creating juice which didn't exist until you squeezed it out of the lemon.
But that's how we eat lemons.
Doesn't make a
Right.
difference. What do you mean that's how you eat lemons?
I mean, in other words, we don't eat a lemon. We eat we eat the juice of the lemon.
To suck it out.
That's a different issue. But I'm just trying to understand.
But we want to talk, what is the profile of the melacha? The profile, what is threshing? Threshing, you have chaff and you have a kernel attached to that chaff.
Let's say you could eat that kernel raw, Rabbi. Can you take that kernel out of?
You could eat it raw. You could.
So then, what's the difference?
The chaff is inedible. The chaff is inedible.
But so what's the difference?
Here you're extracting
and a peanut. You can break a peanut.
Separate discussion. A peanut, why it's permitted.
Or an orange.
Yeah. A walnut.
Anything.
Yeah. It's not boring because that's called derech achilo. That's the way you eat the nut. That's when you eat it.
Isn't that not the same thing with a kernel and a chaff?
You could slice the lemon. You could slice the lemon. You could squeeze the lemon onto a food item. When you squeeze the lemon on a food item, what is the juice? The juice is not liquid. It has the same original classification. That's why you could, if you want to squeeze a lemon on a piece of fish or on salad, it's permitted on Shabbos. You want to squeeze it into a vessel, and now you have juice, and now you want to pour that lemon juice on something, that's a Torah violation. Because when you squeeze it on a salad or a piece on fish, it never assumes the identity of liquid. That's a food item and it still remains a food item.
I see.
Eating as a food item.
That's why you can't squeeze it into a cup of water. You can't do that.
Squeeze it into an empty vessel for the same reason.
Same thing. But now let's get back to the wine for a second. So we're talking about borer though.
Borer is after dosh. You have two things intermingled, right? That's what we speak about. Two things intermingled.
Correct.
Now you want to separate these two things that are intermingled.
Okay.
So when you want to separate it, you have to take the essential from the non-essential.
Okay.
Because processing for immediate use, one takes essential from non-essential.
Exactly.
Wait, good. So let's say I have shmorim. It's the sediment, and the sediment is intermingled with wine. There's wine there.
Correct.
It's absorbed in the sediment.
Understood.
So now I take this mush, this mash, and put it on the strainer. And by sitting on the strainer, the wine will seep out, which is intermingled with the sediment. So you have two entities mixed. That's borer.
I see. So
Separating the essential from non-essential with a vessel.
but forget the vessel. Use your hand.
No.
Is the issue the vessel?
Would not be a problem. Would not be a problem. If you want to take that and separate the liquid from the non-liquid without a strainer, it's not a problem.
So then the issue is the strainer.
Exactly. It is the strainer. It's the strainer.
It's the strainer.
It's the strainer. That's
So
the issue.
So the issue is that you're using an item
A
that's
vessel.
a professional. Let's call it
a utensil.
Let's call it a professional utensil.
It's a utensil which is not the equivalent of your hand. It's not the equivalent. A fork and a knife is your hand.
So my question is, what's the difference then between utensil and hand? Why is that different?
Because one's called eating and one's called processing. You eat with your hand. That's called eating.
So
How
that would
do you normally eat? You normally eat, you take essential from non-essential. That's how you normally eat. Right? Not non-essential. But what about using a utensil to take essential from non-essential? That's not called eating. That's called processing. That's why it's a Torah violation.
So, but it's processing, not borer.
Borer is processing.
Borer is processing.
That is processing. You're not permitted to process on Shabbos.
Okay.
You're permitted to eat on Shabbos.
I see. Very good.
Okay? So now, if it's a mash, you have sediment with liquid, and now you put it in that strainer. The weight of sitting on that strainer will cause the liquid to separate from that sediment. That's borer. That's called processing. What about the sediment has absorbed within it? It's not two separate items. It's not an intermingling of two things. Now, when I pour the water through the sediment, the water will assume the taste of the sediment because it has wine absorbed in the sediment. What have you separated? You didn't separate anything.
What do you mean? But the wine is in the sediment,
No,
Rabbi.
no. It's like part of it. It's like if I take a lemon, and I soak it in water, and the water now absorbs the taste of the lemon. Is that a Torah violation? It's not, it's permitted. It's the same water.
Okay, but you're still getting some
Doesn't make
kind
a
of
difference.
lemon
No, doesn't make
juice.
a difference. That's not. The water is the same water. If the water would come out red, right?
Yeah.
Right? Would come out like wine. So you're doing, by pouring the water, you're extracting the what? It's like the equivalent of squeezing. You're squeezing the lemon,
Uh-huh.
right?
Okay.
That's what you're doing. Here it's the water that's coming out. Now it's tinged with the taste of wine. So borer, it's not borer because we're not dealing with a mash. It's a mash. I have two entities. The strain is causing them to separate. Right? And that's what Mishmur says. When you pour the water on the sediment, it's the same water that went through the sediment is the water at the other end of that. Nothing's being separated.
So what we're saying is that
Strain did not separate anything.
what we're separating here is just taste, nothing else.
Let's say you had the sediment in your hand and you would pour water on that and it would run through your fingers, right? No vessel. The water now has a taste of wine because it went through the sediment. You didn't extract the sediment. There was no extraction of wine from the sediment. The wine is still slurred. That's what he says. The water is slurred.
I hear it. So we're differentiating between taste and really actual product.
The extract, the liquid absorbed in the sediment.
Okay.
That's how he's differentiating. Okay. Let's see Yud. Yayin or mayim shem shlulim. You have wine, which does not be filtered. Or water doesn't have to be filtered. And now you want a filter. Let's say you have a filter on your sink. You have an aerator on your faucet. What's the aerator? It's the catch. If you have any sediment that comes through the water, you want it to be caught on that. But let's say you wouldn't have an aerator. What would intermingle with the water? Would that be considered a separate entity? It's not a separate entity. That's considered water itself. That is the wine. So if you have yain slulin, you have wine, which is basically filtered clear wine, and you want to filter to a great degree. Anything which is seen as part of the wine, although you may filter out something, that's like taking a piece of meat and slicing it. It's the wine, it's the original wine. You're not extracting something from something else. It's the wine itself, you're just filtering it to be pure. So anything you will drink, we'll speak later. If you have water and you have leeches in the water, you can't drink a leech. So you put a piece of gauze on the top of the barrel and you pour out the barrel of water. And the filter catches the leeches. That's borer. That's a Torah violation. Why? Because the leech is not naturally part of the water. You wouldn't drink a leech with water. But let's say you have the water you drink filtered water. And eventually over time, the filter has to be changed because it's absorbed with all kinds of minerals. Those minerals are really part of the water. Anything which is seen as part of something, separating it, that's not called separating because that's the water itself. That's exactly what he's saying. So when you filter wine or filter water, which is potable, as what it is, that's not called filtering. That's not called separating.
Wait, so are we saying then that the sediment in wine that's part of the
You don't drink sediment.
But it's part of the wine, Rabbi.
No. One doesn't drink wine with sediment. You don't drink wine with sediment. You filter it out. The sediment is always on the bottom of the barrel.
Okay.
That sinks to the bottom of the barrel. But let's say you have wine fully potable, but you want it to drink it, you want it to be more refined. But the average person drinks the wine as it is. So basically, when you separate what's in the wine, that's part of the wine itself. That's wine from wine. That's not wine from something else. Because what you're filtering out is part of the wine, because the person normally drinks that as part of the wine.
So, Rabbi, I remember there was a friend of mine used to love this bottle of wine, and on the bottom of the bottle there was a sediment, and that was part of the wine.
No, but you don't drink that.
But it's in the wine.
Doesn't make that sediment also in the wine. It's in the barrel. Doesn't make a difference. It's something that you normally drink, except you want it to be more refined. The average person drinks it.
Okay.
Seen as water, it's seen as wine.
Okay.
The sediment is not seen as part of the wine. The sediment is usually on the bottom of the barrel, and you want to separate that sediment from the wine. You don't drink sediment. So something which is not seen as part of the liquid, you separate that. That's borer. Something that's seen as part of the liquid, because normally you would drink it, except you want it to be more refined. That's not called borer. That's wine from wine.
What are you doing then? What is a person doing then if he's using a strainer? What, I don't understand. Why would that be allowed?
Because that's not called separating.
So what are you doing then?
You're making it to be more refined. That's called more refined. You're filtering the wine to be more refined.
Okay.
And that's not called separating. If you take wine from wine, is that called separating? If what you're filtering out is part of the wine, did you separate one entity from another? The answer is no. That's like separating wine from wine.
Rabbi, can I go back when you squeeze the lemon on the fish, but let's say, which is totally fine, ochel to ochel, but now you said, you know what, I put too much lemon on that fish. If you were to take a fork and remove the lemon from the fork on the excess lemon juice onto your plate, is that a problem? Because now you're essentially squeezing or separating that lemon juice on it.
You're not squeezing. You're not squeezing.
No,
right,
so
you're not squeezing.
It's already ochel, right?
Ochel. That's ochel from ochel.
Right.
So it's considered part of the fish as soon as it touches it.
Yes.
That's
yes.
interesting. That's so interesting.
Okay, let's get back over here. We have yayin or mayim she'tzluin, wine or water, which is fluid, which is clear wine, clear water. Mutal sana mishmeres. You're permitted to filter it with a strainer, with a filter. Agav api she'eshba keep sobim dakin. Although when you filter it, you have small, tiny sobim, like whatever it is. You have things which are filtered out. Since normally you would drink it with the wine, or you drink it with the water, that's considered like part of it. Okay. But if you use a cloth and you use water, it's a problem, because that's called libun. Libun is laundering. If you have a cloth and you want to soak it in water, what's the halacha? You're actually what? That's libun. We say that shriyasa zui libunon. Soaking is part of the laundering process. Okay? The Gemara says in Shabbos that if you have a barrel of water, in the olden days, you would draw water from a well, and you had a barrel. And you had a barrel of water, so you would always usually cover the barrel with a cloth, because otherwise you'd have all kinds of things falling into the barrel. That cloth that you cover the barrel with is a cloth which normally is sopping wet. Sopping wet. Why? Because that's the cloth. And you remove the cloth and you take water out of the barrel, you put the cloth back on. And there's no concern you may squeeze out that cloth, because that cloth is meant to be wet. Because that cloth is designated to cover the barrel. What about if you want to take another cloth, which is not normally used to cover that barrel? You're not permitted to cover the barrel with that cloth. Why? Because there's a concern that since that other cloth normally is not wet, by covering that barrel with that cloth, what happens when normally a garment becomes wet, or a piece of cloth that's normally not wet becomes wet? You wring it out. Wringing something out, that's part of the laundering process. So over here, by using a cloth and filtering the water with a cloth, the issue is not borer. The issue is what? Is libud. It's laundering. It becomes part of the laundering process. However, if we yain usham mashkin, if we wine or other liquids, which the cloth becomes dirty, you're not cleansing the garment. Okay, we'll leave it here. We'll continue tomorrow on this. Let's see Rabbeinu Yonah. Where I left off 606. Reish Chav Ches in Rabbeinu Yonah. Ato hishtoni b'kil yosecho. Over here he uses it's a term. And now sharpen your thinking to comprehend the nature of this matter. Hini igdamnu. He said, we said earlier, you're permitted to speak negatively about a person who's a sinner. Person is known to be a thief, and he hasn't changed his errant behavior. You're permitted to speak negatively about him because he's a Russian. Person is known to be a thief. He victimizes people. He damages people. He presses Malvin Ponin. He embarrasses people publicly. He's a person who's a gossiper. You have certain people, there's an expression, you don't want to fall into that guy's mouth, right? There's an expression in Yiddish. You don't want to fall into his mouth. Because the moment you fall into his mouth, the whole world knows all about your life. So he's a gossiper. Lo Heshiv Exelo, the man did not return what was stolen, and it's known he still has it. Lo Shilam Nisko, he damaged someone, he's not paying damages. He's shirking his responsibility. He didn't ask forgiveness after he embarrassed the person publicly, did not ask forgiveness. However, he says, where is it? Those who wish to perfect their ways and avoid damage of avak lashon hara. Even though you're permitted, but a person wants to be protected from speaking something you shouldn't say. Halachically, you're permitted to speak about this guy, this person. But maybe you'll be able to be more effective if you speak to him in a way where he'll be receptive to what you tell him. Maybe. So rather than making public knowledge that he's a bad guy and causing him maybe to better his ways by people knowing his unacceptable behavior, you could address it differently. Speak to him.
Rabbi, could you have Beth mute, please?
I will mute her.
Thank you.
Okay. Next time it happens, I'll say something. Okay.
Thank you.
But let's say after you've attempted to do it, you can either do it the good way or the bad way. As you deal with after you've tried to go the right in the nice way, it doesn't help, and the man's not willing to change. Then you could go public on that person's behavior. Go public. It's a famous story with Nod Yehuda. There was a man in Prague. He was going in the 1700s. He was a monster, and Nod Yehuda said to him, you have to divorce your wife. The way the relationship was going, you have an obligation to divorce her. He says, I'm not divorcing her. He says, but you realize she's going to remain like a living widow. She can't remarry. He says, I couldn't care less. So Nod Yehuda says, look, you have one of two ways that she can be permitted. Either divorce her or she could be widowed. He says, doesn't make a difference. If you ever take a look, Alan toured the Eastern Europe, when he went on his trip to Prague. So in the olden days, very often you had the rabbi lived on the top of the building. You had a staircase like about 50, 60 steps going up the side of the building. You have to see pictures of the old houses in Europe. So he walks out of Noach house, and Noach says, look, I'm telling you, you have a choice. Either divorce her, and she'll be permitted, or she'll be a widow. Man says, I'm not divorcing her. He trips, falls down the steps, breaks his neck. Now you can do it the easy way, you do it the hard way. So she was widowed. Same thing. You try to do it nicely, speak to this gently, do tshuva, return it. I'm not returning it. But you realize you're doing the wrong thing. It's irrelevant. Then you have a right to go public, to expose this person for whatever his unacceptable behavior is. It's not a problem. You're permitted.
But what are we really talking about here? If a person sees his friend going into McDonald's and eating a cheeseburger, and
no, he's doing it deliberately.
Yeah,
he knows better, and he couldn't care less.
Right. So are we saying that the person who saw him do this has a right to say something to out there publicly?
All the other things we're speaking about is he's hurting other people. He's stealing, damaging this and that. And
Right,
he
exactly.
better his ways. But factually speaking, if the man deliberately violates the Torah, he's classified as a Russia. You have a right to speak negatively about him.
Wow.
You have a right. There's no prohibition of
even though it's not affecting anybody else. It's just him.
Yes, correct. You're permitted, but the others, you should divulge it, because otherwise, there's only way he's going to correct his behavior to compensate people for stealing or hurting them, whatever it is, or stopping this unacceptable. Man embarrasses people, So how do you stop him? He becomes persona non grata. Everybody knows he's a bad guy. Everybody stays away from him. That's the only way to control him. But if he continues this behavior and nobody says a word to him, he'll continue doing the wrong continuously, victimizing the community.
So that's a blanket, if anyone who's not a Shomer Shabbos person and therefore publicly violates.
It's not simple, because even if not a Shomer Shabbos, the Chavetz says, you never know. He doesn't fully appreciate how wrong it is. The Chavetz writes that a person violates Shabbos, he knows he's doing the wrong thing, but doesn't realize that it carries the death penalty. He thinks it's only a lav. It's a negative commandment. That's a shogeg. So I'm saying it's only if he knows the degree, but he's little shirking, and he has no regard for his Yiddishkeit. That kind of person. He knows better, he couldn't care less. That's his attitude. If he couldn't care less and he knows the extent of what it is and people have spoken to him, then you can speak negatively about that person. I'm not saying there's a mitzvah to speak, but there's no prohibition if you do speak about that person. I'll give you an example. I mean, let's say you have a person who doesn't believe in the 13 tenets of Jewish belief, doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in Olam Haba, doesn't believe in the divinity of the Torah. The person is considered not Bikoros. He has no share in the world to come. Could you speak about that person? There's no prohibition. No prohibition to speak about that person. The person's not considered your fellow Jew. He's a Jew, but he's not your fellow Jew. Therefore, there's no prohibition speaking lashon hara about that guy. If you want to speak about Soros or his son, you could say anything you want. To openly deny and whatever they represent, they flaunt it in a way which is not to be believed. And what they do negatively, no problem. Anything you want to say negative about those guys, you could say negative about them. Okay.
Can you take them out? They're Rodef. They're Nirov.
Put it this way. We live in this society.
Why don't they take them out? Why don't they take them out?
Who should take them out?
All these years. Mossad, and I mean, a million people could take them out.
Evidently, they have no reason.
But I'm just talking halachically.
Probably you could take the guy, you could take him out.
It's no form. I mean,
There'd be consequences. look, the government knows exactly all these things that are being funded. He's the main funder of all these, which are all these upping people.
Right, Antifa, all these things, right?
Everything, he's funding it. So what's the government? The government should rein it on, put him away.
Well, they are now. They're looking into him now, right?
Trump is the first one to even mention now that they're going to investigate him. Till now, there was not a word.
Right.
You know, in Europe, there were many Jews who were informers. They were informers. And very often they would kill them. During the Tsarist government, people were informers, they informed, and Jews' lives were taken. All of a sudden they would disappear. Because these people informed on them, they were Jews informed within the Jewish community. So how did they get rid of the informers? The informer, he had to play the role of an observant Jew. He would go to the mikveh and he'd have an accident. He went down, he didn't come up. As he went down, somebody kept him up in the water, he didn't come up because that person was a rodif. His informing is the equivalent of he's actually pursuing Jews taking their lives. Okay, let's see the Gemara. Okay, we're going to start in the Mishnah on Chav Heben Beis. We would like right just beginning of the Gemara here. B'chor shenafel lebor. We'd mentioned this. If you have a domesticated animal, a sheep, a goat, a cow, and it's the first issue of its mother, it's considered a b'chor. A b'chor naturally, if it's unblemished, is what? Is naturally consecrated. You're not permitted to slaughter it outside the Beis HaMikdash. So today we have no Beis HaMikdash. The person is, let's say, in the cattle business, and he has a female gives birth to a male, a b'chor, a bull. That bull has kedusha. Once it becomes blemished, the Torah says it needs no redemption. Immediately, it's permitted. It's permitted. But what's a blemish? It has to be a permanent blemish. And there's a whole Masechet Bechoros speaks about what exactly the blemishes are, which considered blemish that no longer has the kedusha. A b'chor that falls into a pit. An expert who can make this diagnosis, whether it's a permanent blemish or not, he goes into the pit and he makes that determination that if it's a permanent blemish, you take it out of the pit. It says, if yesh bo mum, yalev yishrot. Take it out of the pit and you slaughter it. You slaughter the animal, because otherwise you have no right. We deal with tzar b'lechaim. The animal is suffering in the pit. But you can't take it out of the pit because of the degree of effort, unless it has relevance to Yom Tov. So if it's a permanent blemish, you take it out of the pit, you slaughter it, that's ochel nefesh, you're permitted. Vim lav, lo yishkot. But if not, you're not permitted. You're not permitted to take it out of the pit. Reb Shimon Omano, koshe mum nikar bebodyo, unless the mum, it was determined before Yom Tov that it was a mum kavua, it was a permanent blemish, you're not permitted to take it out of the pit. Not permitted. Even though later so over here Rashi makes the point in Shabbos with Machlokes Reb Shimon Reb Yehuda, who's more stringent regarding muktzah. Reb Yehuda's more stringent opinion. Reb Yehuda holds muktzah. Shimon doesn't hold of muktzah. So therefore Rashi explains, here we find Reb Yehuda's makil, right? That the Chacham did not see, the expert did not see the book before Shabbos, before Yom Tiv, but yet if he finds it to be a mum, so the question is, what about muktzah? This animal was not fit for slaughtering before Yom Tiv, so it's muktzah. So Rashi explains, there was a mum, except you're not permitted to slaughter it until the expert gives his ruling on it. So the person mindset was, he's expecting to get a ruling that it's what? That it's a mum kavua. Except, so therefore, in terms of mindset, Reb Yehuda says it's not a problem. Because he's expecting this decision to come down the pike, except it came on Yom Tov. But maybe there's a question, since you need this level of expertise to make this evaluation, it's like the court giving halachic decision. on Shabbos and Yom Tov, they're not permitted. The court does not convene on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Rabbinically, they're not permitted. So the Chacham going into the pit to give this professional decision is the equivalent of the court giving a verdict, a ruling on what? On Shabbos and Yom Tov, which rabbinically is not permitted. Rav Yehuda says, no, it's permitted. It's not the equivalent of that. Therefore, the expert can go into the pit and give you his expert decision. That's a mukavua. So mukta it's not, because the owner of the animal was expecting the decision to be given, except he, not being the professional, he couldn't give that decision. But he's waiting for that decision, and since the mumche is qualified to do it, it's not mukta, and it's permitted. Reb Shimon says no. Even though it's coming down the pike, but since halachically he's not permitted to give the decision, that's the reason why you're not permitted to benefit from it. Because halachically, if in all contexts, it's off limits to you.
Rabbi, when we say that it could be not off limits and therefore you could do shlita and eat it, what about if the mum, creates that it's not even permissible to eat, right? There's certain mums.
Even Reb Yehuda would agree it's not permitted. Here it speaks, the owner feels it's a mukavur. It is a mukavur, except until you get the green light from the expert, you can't slaughter it. So according to Reb Yehuda, in his mind, I just have to get the expert there to what? To give me the decision. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a can, and the can is closed. And let's say you're permitted to open cans on Yom Tov, but you don't have a can open to open it. Can't open it. But you got to borrow a can open. And the person who has the can open to give you the can, well, first is coming Yom Tov morning. Is the food in the can muktzah because the food wasn't available because you couldn't open the can? The food was there, and I know tomorrow I'm going to have a can open to open it. It's not muktzah. Well, it wasn't available to you when Yom Tov began. But that's only a circumstance. But in mindset, if I have the can open, the food will be available. I know this is a mukavua, except I'm not authorized to give that decision, to give that verdict. I need the expert. The expert's first coming tomorrow morning. So tomorrow morning, when he sees it, he's going to give me the verdict, which I was expecting. If that's the case, it's not muktzah, according to Reb Yehuda. It's the equivalent of that. Reb Shimon says no. If you're not permitted to open that can on Yom Tov, for all intents and purposes, when Yom Tov began, that food was off limits to you.
Right.
It was not available. Because the expert is not permitted to give that kind of ruling on Yom Tov. So if that's the case, it's not. The ruling that was given is not within the context of what? Of something that you expected.
Right. And the animal didn't fall yet. So therefore, before Yom Tov started.
The animal's in the pit already.
He only fell on Yom Tov. Before Yom Tov, don't we always say, Ben Hashmashos, whatever it is, before is how it is throughout the entire time?
Okay. What the Gemara is going to discuss is, what do we have to, if the whole discussion is the Chacham permitted to give this ruling or not, what do we have to talk about? The animals in the pit. The animal's not in the pit. The animal's in your barn. You're waiting for a decision, and the Chacham didn't show up before Yom Tov.
Right.
And now, could he give the decision? Could he not? Let that be the argument. What do we have to talk about? The animal fell into a pit. That's going to be the Gemara's question in a moment.
Rabbi, just getting back to Tzar Baalei Chaim for a second. So is that a D'oraisa or the Rabbanan, Tzar Baalei Chaim?
It's a question. It's machlokas in the Gemara.
So then, obviously, Rav Shimon would hold that it's a D'Rabbanan, because otherwise...
No. Just as you don't blow shofar Rosh Hashanah, which falls out on Shabbos, although it's a Torah obligation, we don't want you to make that level of effort, even though the Tzar Baalei Chaim is D'oraisa. But it's not going to become an overriding factor. We're going to allow you to make that effort to prevent that suffering of the animal.
Why not? Why?
The tircha that's needed to take the animal out of the pit,
right?
Not going to allow it for that, unless it's ochel nefesh. Ochel nefesh will allow it.
So a tircha is also, is that a deraisa then?
It's a deraisa, but again, it's a different type of deraisa. Let me ask you. Let's say the animal has no blood, is not a bechor, and it falls. Could you take it out of the pit? The answer: you can take it out of the pit. It takes a tremendous amount of effort taking it out of the pit. But if ultimately you can slaughter it to be ochel nefesh, Chazal said you're permitted to take it out of the pit. regardless of what level of effort you need to take it out of the pit.
Okay. Okay.
That's ochel nefesh. But
Okay.
here, there's no ochel nefesh here. So if there's no ochel nefesh, we're not going to allow you to take it out of the pit, despite the fact that there's sar b'lechayim. We're not going to allow it.
I'm just a little confused why we can't if it's a deraisa to help the animal.
We say the Chacham have the ability, even in the Doraisa, if you're in violation of the Doraisa in a passive context, they have that ability to tell you not to do it. Like blowing the shofar at Shabbos that falls out of Rosh falls out of Shabbos. Same idea.
I see.
Okay. Let's go a little further. So now the Gemara wants to know what exactly is Machlokes Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda. If it's the Gemara's going to ask, if it's is the Chacham permitted to give this decision on Yom Tov or not? Why argue with the animals in the pit? The animal's not in the pit. Animals in the barn, and you're aware it had this blemish before Yom Tov. Could you have the Chacham give a decision on Yom Tov or not? They might commit. If they're arguing, is the Chacham permitted to give that decision on Yom Tov or not? The reviews of Roan Mumin beyond the reviews of the opinion that the Chacham is permitted. It's not the equivalent of Bezdin giving a verdict. Reb Shimon Shava Roan Mumin, Liflu Baron Mumin, Dalma. So that's what they should argue. Let them argue. You have your animal in the barn. Is the Chacham permitted to give this decision or not? That should be the Machlokes. So more answers. No, because we have to. He has to want to say it's only even if it's in the pit. Even if it's in the pit. Yeah. Why? So that Mishum Tzar B'Lechayim, Lar V'Liske. Maybe for the sake of Barachayim, you'll take it out, and you use some on a subterfuge. Karib Yeshua. Meaning, even though it wants to show us, so Mar says, Yochi lo yishchot lo yaler. Yochi lo yishchot lo yaler yishchot liboyle. The Mishnah says, if you have an animal falls in the pit, you should not slaughter it. It should say, you should not take it out and slaughter it. Yeah, that's what it should say. Lo tzricha dovasku. It's speaking to the person that he took it out of the pit. It was in the pit and he took it out of the pit. So maybe once you take it out of the pit, maybe you could slaughter it. Shlon, that you don't. So Mar asked l'shachti or tabu. It was speaking about that it's not clear whether it's a balmum or not. It's unblemished. What's even the consideration to consider that you should slaughter it? The novel bein muma. Meaning the mum came on Yom Tiv. So Mar asks, hamukzu. If the mum came on Yom Tiv, Rabbi Yehuda would not permit it because since before Yom Tiv it was unblemished, everybody would agree it's muktzah. Another made mum over Me'er Yom Tiv. There was a mum which was questionable what it was before Yom Tiv. Vashtav mum kavur. Yeah, it became a mum kavur on Yom Tiv. Mum kavur. Mal the same as daite aluyo. Maybe you would say that's considered part of the equation. You should be able to slaughter it. Therefore, if he takes that in the pit, because Kamashla, no, you're not permitted to slaughter it. So over here, 1 second. Yeah. The way he's explaining it's this way. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the only reason why it's permitted is only because it was mum kavur. If initially it started off as a mum ein kavur, and it became a mum kavur in the pit, even Rabbi Yehuda agrees it's not a problem. It is a problem. It's only because it was in the pit as a mum kavua, that's the reason why it's not muktzah. But if it would have been muktzah, even if you took it out of the pit, would not allow you to slaughter it. So review the speaks specifically. If it actually had the mum kavua before Yom Tif, review says then you're permitted to take it out, to slaughter it. But if it would be not a mum kavua, even if you would take it out and it turned out to be mum kavua, review say you're not permitted to slaughter it. Because review says it has to be definitely available to you in the mindset of the person. Otherwise, it's considered muktzah. According to Reb Shimon says no, ain't Roman movement, regardless. Even Reb Shimon is makel regarding muktzah, but if you hold ain't Roman movement, you're not permitted to give that kind of decision. It's unrelated to muktzah. Even within the context of muktzah, it's muktzah because this animal was not meant to be available to you, right? According to Reb Yehuda, tzemum kavua, you take it out, you're permitted. What do I have to speak about in the pit? Because you may think if it's eno kavua, maybe you took it out, it turns to be mum kavua, you would slaughter it. No, the Mishnah is saying specifically according to review, only when it fell in with a mum kavua and rolling mumin. But according to Reb Shimon, even if it went in as with a mum kavua and you took it out, the halacha is you're not permitted to eat it because it's considered muktzah.
So it's
according to Reb Shimon.
right. So it sounds like according to what we're saying right now, the whole idea of having a mumcha going down and check whether it's a mum kavua is irrelevant. What's the point? According to Rabbi Yehuda, it doesn't even, you don't even need a guy. Just bring him up. How many checks?
No. We're talking about
Why?
He brought him up.
Right.
You're not permitted to take it out unless you know it's a mum kavua. So
Right.
So let it be in the barn. Even the barn, what do you have to talk about in the pit? Right? That was the question.
Right.
Finish is in the pit, he's telling me, let's say when originally started as a mum eno kavua. Eno kavua. It was eno kavua, and it became a mum kavua in the pit. And he took it out. He took it out of the pit. Is it permitted point to Rabbi Yehuda? It's not permitted. Even though he had a good chance that this mum eno kavua would turn into a mum kavua, doesn't make a difference. Unless you know faction to mum kavua before Yom Tif, it's muktzah. Point to Rabbi Yehuda.
I understand. If you knew it was a mum kavua before Yom Tov and it fell into the pit, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you could take it out.
100%, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can take it out. So what do we have to talk about in the pit?
Because
It's telling you a chiddush that's only because it's a mum kavua in the pit you can take it out. But if it went in as a mum eno kavua, even if it turned out to be mum kavua, even Rabbi Yehuda agrees you're not permitted to slaughter it, even if you took it out. You got it?
so right, I do. But so where is the whole idea of the
Why
mumcha?
do we have to talk about it's in the pit?
Huh?
Why do we have to talk about it's in the pit? That's the
No, I
question.
understand. Because if it's in the pit, it was not a mum kavua before Yom Tov.
Even if you took it out, even though there was a strong likelihood it would turn to mum kavua, if it was
Right.
not a mum kavua, even if you took it out, we don't let you slaughter according to Rabbi Yehuda. Even if you took it out. The person then asked the rabbi, took it out. And the rabbi comes and says it's a mum kavua. But he understood before Yom Tif, it was not as extreme as this. Rabbi Yehuda would agree in that case, you cannot slaughter it. It's
Okay,
only
fine.
if it was a mum kavua in the pit, that's why you can slaughter it.
Then it was a mum kavua before Yom Tov. That's what we're saying.
That's what Yehuda says. If you could take it out, you could slaughter it.
Exactly.
Only because of that.
I understand. So to teach us, it's in the pit. So to teach us that if it wasn't before Yom Tov, then fine.
What it's a mum eno kavua, according to Rabbi Yehuda.
Mean before Yom Tov?
Before Yom Tif, it was a mum eno kavua, it became a mum kavua on Yom Tif. Maybe
Right.
Rabbi Yehuda permit you to slaughter it if you took it out.
No, he said you wouldn't. He was saying.
I know that's exactly what the Gemara is explaining.
Right.
According to Rabbi, why is it not muktzah? Only because it was mum kavua in the pit. It would tell me that chiddush. But if it was a mum eno kavua in the pit, even if he took it out, and later the Chacham says it's kavua, we're not going to let you slaughter it.
So why not just say, Rabbi, if you have an animal that's in your barn and there's a there's a mum. We don't know if it's kavu or not before Yontif or after Yontif. So why not just use that example? Why we have to bring a pit here? Same question.
Because it's telling me the Chiddush is according to, because the person already went and took it out, maybe that would be a reason to be more lenient. Because he went and made the effort to take it out. On that, the Gemara is saying, the Mishnah saying, no, regardless of what kind of effort you made, doesn't make it, unless it's mukavua, it's off limits.
Okay.
Rabbi, obviously, there's a depth of the pit and there's rove. And if, let's say, it's a situation where, rove of animals that are going to fall this depth are going to clearly have a mum kavua. Okay, so why can't we rely on that and then just do the shlita based on that?
Because unless you have a psak of a chacham, you're not permitted to slaughter it.
Rabbi, isn't that the same case though, Rabbi? If he didn't have a mum before Yontif and he fell into the pit and Rov says it'd be a mum kavua, it's irrelevant. It didn't have a mum beforehand.
No, he's told, let's it fell in before. It fell in before Yontif.
Before Yontif.
Yeah, that's what Jay said. And the majority of animals, and they get a mum kavua. It doesn't make a difference. Unless the chacham gives you the ruling, you're not permitted to slaughter it.
But I thought the chacham's ruling. Okay, so the chacham is not allowed on Yontif to affect status change, but his status was already
explaining. No.
It already was.
You need the official psak to be able to permit you to eat the slaughter that animal.
And until then, it is a different status.
Right, correct. So his ruling is like a ruling in court.
Changes.
Right.
And that's not allowed on Shabbos or Yom Tov.
On Yom Tov, even though it's ochel nefesh, it's not permitted.
And for all the more so on Shabbos.
Shabbos then has no relevance.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Let's go a little further. Ton Rabbanon. B'chor tam shenofel lebor. Now, until now, we were arguing, it was Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon, they are the Tanoim. Reb Shimon is Reb Shimon Yochai, and Reb Yehuda. Now we're talking about the Talmidim, the students of Reb Shimon Yochai. Ton Rabbanon, B'chor tam shenofel lebor. Reb Yehuda Nossi. Now, who's Reb Yehuda Nossi? Reb Yehuda Nossi. Reb Yehuda Nossi was a Talmid of Reb Shimon Yochai. His Rebbe was Reb Shimon Yochai. So Reb Yehuda Nossi says, Yerid mumchi yira, im yesh bo mum yal yishchot, im lav lo yishchot. Yeah. So when Rabbi Yehuda Nossi is quoting, taking on a position, he says, a mumche go and evaluate whether it's a mum or not, and you permit it, we have a problem. According to the Mishnah, Reb Shimon Yochai says now Mishnah what? That you're not permitted. And Rabbi Yehuda Nossi is saying that it is permitted, even though Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, his position is based upon his Rebbe. And who was his Rebbe? His Rebbe is Reb Shimon Yochai. Okay, Reb Yehuda Nossi Omer Yerid Mumche Yireh Im Yesh Bo Mum Yalav Yishchot Im Lav Lo Yishchot. Omer the Reb Shimon Menashe. So Reb Shimon Menashe was a colleague. Reb Yehuda Nossi says to him, "Hari Omru Ein Roen Mum B'Yom Tov." How could you say and take on the position that our Rebbe Reb Shimon Yochai said that you permitted? It's known that our Rebbe held Reb Shimon Yochai holds Ein Roen Mumin. You're not permitted. So if that's the case, it's muktzah. How could you say that you're permitted? Hari Omru Ein Roen Mumin B'Yom Tov. Ketzad. Now, let's discuss a number of cases. Ketzad no little mum erev Yom Tov. If a mum developed erev Yom Tov, ein mevakros Yom Tov. That's one halakha. He said what we learned. A mum developed before Yom Tov, but it wasn't determined whether it's a mum kavu or not before Yom Tov. You're not permitted, the Chacham is not permitted to make that evaluation on Yom Tov. This is Reb Shimon Menashe saying, quoting his Rebbe Reb Shimon Yochai, no mum be Yom Tov. If the mum happened on Yom Tov, Reb Shimon Omer Ein Zeh Min HaMuchan. Reb Shimon says that's muktzah. Even Reb Shimon agrees it's muktzah. Im no b'm Yom Tov, Reb Shimon Yochai Omer Ein Zeh Min HaMuchan, Rafil over bikro liyishchot. Who could sakno? Even if the mum happened on Yom Tiv, on no circumstance, even as a consideration that it's permitted. According to Shimon ben Yochai. Shavin However, everybody agrees, Shimnola hu mumu imo, the third case. What about as the animal was being born, the owner of the animal saw that it had a mum kavua. No chacham was there. That's considered mucham. Because we're going to see later, let's say the chacham is there, and as he sees it coming out, it had a mum kavua. That means it never assumed the status of what? Of chesed iser.
Are we talking on Yontif, Rabbi?
On Yom Tov. Okay? Meaning like this. An animal that's born, firstborn, the presumption is it's a bechor, it's off limits. So you need a psak to change its status. You need a psak to change its status. So that's like the court giving a ruling on Yom Tov, therefore it's not permitted. What about if you have, the Gemara say you have 3 people present as the animal's being born, and they see the mum. Since the animal never assumed a forbidden status, when they say permitted, it doesn't take on the status of an official ruling. Because it's not, it assumed a certain status until they said it's permitted. Something that was seen as forbidden, and now the mumche or the court wants to say it's permitted, that's called an official psak. That takes on the psak like a bezdin is officially convening to give a psak. Rabbinically, you're not going to do it. But if they're present as the animal's coming out, and they see clearly it's not a mum, they could say it's permitted. They could say it's permitted because they never assumed a forbidden status.
But Rav Yehuda would hold that you could have someone come and check.
Or Rav Shimon. Yeah, you're correct.
Right. Okay. Let's be clear.
Okay. But that's what he says. Even Rav Shimon concurs with Rabbi Yehuda that it's permitted.
If everybody sees it coming out and it's a
As coming out, you see it initially because it never assumed a forbidden status.
So it's
Yeah.
so when we say that Rav Shimon's always more machmir, and here it's the opposite, but it's not a question of muksa now. So that's why he's more makel. It's
Yeah,
not a
it's-
muksa issue.
He's not more makel. In this context, Rav Yehuda is more makel than Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon
No,
says,
but I'm saying, but it's not a chiddush because it's not a muksa issue. He's not always more machmir.
Muktzah is dependent upon whether Rowan Mumin. If you hold Rowan Mumin, there's no muktzah issue. No muktzah issue. Correct? Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that even though you didn't have the ruling, if you're Rowan Mumin, it's not muktzah. Even Rabbi Yehuda is more machmer muktzah. There's no reason why it should be muktzah, because he was aware, we just have to wait for the Chacham to come. Rabbi Shimon holds no, even if the Chacham comes, he's not permitted to give you that kind of ruling. So if he gives you that kind of ruling, it's off limits to you. Because that ruling normally is not permitted to give. Okay? And I was just thinking, we asked the question, let's say you have a kashrus issue. Kashrus, and you go to the Chacham and he tells you it's kosher. 60-1, not 60-1, he has to make an evaluation. And you have to go ask him, is that called Bezdin giving a psak? It's not a question of Bezdin giving a psak. Why is one thing permitted, one's not permitted? Right? Originally, when we started this, we had this question. It's off limits. Savi the rice l'chumra, you're not permitted it. Chacham says it's okay.
There's a big difference in the cases, Rabbi, because in the case of the rabbi ruling the Pesach, it was kosher all along. All he's doing is clarifying what initially was the status. Here, it's a change of status. It was.
Let's say he tells us what the mum that existed before Yom Tov was a mum kavua. So why is that a clarification?
So that's a good question.
That's what we're coming to explain.
No, because I thought it had to do.
How to do with what?
No, I thought that was the distinction between a kashrus shaila on Yom Tov versus a mum question. Yeah.
What difference? So we mentioned Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, to be able to permit a mum issue, you have to have a certain level of qualification. You have to be a mumche. If you're not a mumche, even though you know it's a mum kavua, you're not permitted to eat it. You have to have the psak of the expert. The expert has to give you the psak. He doesn't give you the psak, it's forbidden until he gives you the ruling. If that's the case, it's the equivalent of Bezdin giving a ruling. Bezdin doesn't give rulings, right?
And
But-
kashrus, anyone can have.
If you would know the halacha, you can give your own ruling. You don't need a rabbi to give you the ruling. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, the Yehuda Nossi, he gave different levels of ordination. He gave an ordination Yora. That's to give rulings on kashrus and yatir. Only certain people were qualified to give the ruling to permit something to be considered balmum. If you didn't have that qualification, you couldn't give that kind of ruling. So therefore, giving that kind of ruling is the equivalent of the court convening to give a ruling. Because other than that person who's qualified, nobody else can give that kind of ruling to make that evaluation. Because see, here it's based on evaluation. Other halachas are based not on evaluation, it's based on, do you know the halacha? You know the halacha? Is this borer, is this not borer? Okay, that's knowing the halacha. Here you have to evaluate the mum, is it a mum, not a mum? Once an evaluation issue, that's already its best.
So when that animal is born and three people see the mum, why would that not be considered?
Marsley explained that since it never took on a forbidden status, as a result of that, it doesn't take on that profile of a court ruling, overturning a status. If it was forbidden, now the ruling is changing the status. This is not changing the status. It never assumed that original status. Because as it came out, in the womb, the animal's permitted. It's only when it passes out of the womb, that's when it becomes Kedushas Bechor. So since as it came out, immediately said it's a mukavua, that it never had the status, that's not called changing status.
Rabbi, you say the same thing about the animal that had a mum before Yom Tov. It never changed its status.
No, because once it's born, a Bechor that's born has a forbidden status.
Before that's born, correct.
Has a forbidden status.
Correct.
Even you as a novice know it's a mukavua, you have to have the ruling from the expert. Here, the expert at it came out, said, this is not a problem. Should never assume the forbidden status. Because they were present as the animal was being born. That's what the Gemara will explain in a moment.
Okay.
Okay, just two more moments here. So we have three cases. One case, he's saying you had an animal that had a mum that was from before Yom Tiv, right? No level mum of Yom Tiv, ain't vakros from Yom Tiv. If you had a mum before Yom Tiv, the Chacham's not permitted to make an evaluation on Yom Tiv. No level be Yom Tiv. If the mum happened on Yom Tiv, Reb Shimon Omer aim zemin amuchan. It's off limits. See, they're saying three distinct cases. The Shavin, but everybody concurs. Shimnoled hu mumawimo. If as it's born, they see the mum immediately. Okay. Dorsh Rabba Rafuna. No hu mumawimo.
I'm sorry, but just to be clear though, if I thought Rabbi Yehuda would agree that if an animal is born on Yom Tov with a mum, or not born, had a mum that happened on Yom Tov, he would also hold that you're not allowed to eat it.
Correct. We'll see. The Gemara will discuss this in a moment. Mars will discuss this in a moment. Where is it here? We'll see this in a moment. The Gemara will discuss it. Okay, we're gonna stop here. We'll leave this for tomorrow. Okay. We're gonna do Rambam. Jay, you there? Jay,
I am, Rabbi.
are you staying on for this class or not?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm just on my way to shul, but yeah, I'll hear it for like 5 minutes.
Okay, Aaron, are you there? Jay, Ernie, you staying on a little bit?
Just
I'm here,
about
Rebbe. Yes.
5 minutes also. Thank
Okay,
you.
Mark. Okay. We're gonna do Hilchos Brachos in the Rambam. Where is it here? Yeah, here it is. Now this famous halacha, mitzvahs essay min haTorah levorech, acha achilas mozon, that after you eat a grain product, bread, and you finish eating, there's a Torah obligation to acknowledge that satiation. Torah says, you've eaten, you've sated, you bless Hashem. When is it Torah obligation? It's only if you sated. Only if you sated. What about if you eat? You wash, eat a kazais of bread. Does one have an obligation to bench on a Torah level? But on a rabbinic level, if you eat only a kazayis of bread, rabbinically you have an obligation to bench. Okay, very important. What's the halacha? Person eats to he's full, and he doesn't recall whether he benched or not. What do you have to do? Since the Torah says when you eat to a sated point, it's a Torah obligation to bench, you have to repeat the benching. What about if you washed and you had a gazayas of bread? No more than that. So your obligation is rabbinical, and now you have a subject, you don't recall whether you benched or not. Do you bench? The answer is you don't, because that's subject Rabban L'Kula, right? When you're in doubt regarding rabbinic law, you don't bench. What about the benching itself? When Eileh has 4 brachos.
I'm sorry, kazayas, Rabbi? You eat a kazayas?
You eat a gazayas of bread, and now you don't rabbinically have to bench.
Right. So
Now you walk away from the table. Now you don't recall whether you benched or not.
is it because you're not satiated, or because
you're not satiated from bread?
Right.
Well, during that meal,
okay,
the obligation to bench is only rabbinical.
What would be satiated then, Rabbi?
You feel full.
I'll say, so no matter how much you eat of that bread, if you don't feel full,
right? But the person has an appetite, one of a kind appetite. You're still hungry.
Right.
Rabbinical. You only have to bench a rabbinical level.
Oh wow, that I did not. That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay, rabbinically. So let's say you have a suffix where you're not satiated and you don't recall whether you benched or not. Do you have to repeat the benching? The answer is no. Because since the obligation is only rabbinical, we subject Rabban L'Kula. In doubt regarding rabbinic law, you can take it legally. If you ate to a sated point and you don't recall whether you benched or not, you have to repeat Birchas HaMazon. You have to repeat it. Now, we're going to see later, everybody agrees the 4th bracha of Birchas HaMazon is rabbinical. Lolam Eileh Chasreinu is rabbinical. After Bon Yishleim Amen, that's rabbinical, that last bracha. So let's say you eat to a sated point and you don't recall whether you benched or not. Do you repeat the 4th bracha? The answer is no. Because the first 3 brachas is Savi D'Oraisa L'Chumra. Right? So therefore the first 3 have to be repeated. The 4th one, which is only rabbinical, on that I apply the principle of Rabban L'Kula. One does not repeat the 4th bracha. Even though you ate to a sated point, because the basis for the obligation of the 4th is only rabbinical. Okay?
I'm sorry, I think I lost you there. So if you said you said Uvnei Yerushalayim, you said that bracha.
And now you walk away and you don't recall whether you benched at all. You don't recall. And you ate to a sated point.
Correct.
Now when you repeat the Birchas HaMazon, how many brachas do you say? 3 or 4?
You say, I guess you say the whole thing.
No, you only say 3. Because the first 3 are D'Oraisa. The 4th one's rabbinical.
I see. So
the first 3 is Sav D'Oraisa L'Chula. The 4th one is rabbinical, which is Sav Rabban L'Kula.
Oh, okay.
That's what we're saying. But if you only initially ate a kazayas or a beya of bread, would you not say it? So all the brachos are rabbinical. So then you don't repeat the Birchas HaMazon whatsoever.
So to just to be clear, what does it mean to be satiated? Does it mean that you don't want any more food, or
You're satisfied. Sated means it's not where your stomach hurts you. You feel satisfied. Satisfied.
I'm done. I'm done with eating.
Right, you're done
I don't
with-
need anything else. I
Right.
don't.
You're not still craving to eat anything more.
But if a person is still craving, then it's still, and he's not satiated, then it's a
But let's say
durabun.
a person feels he has to have his dessert. But basically, you're satisfied.
Uh,
You walk away, you're satisfied. You don't feel hungry any longer. You know, I'm not hungry anymore. That's what you sated. I'll give you a case. Let's say a person eats a meal, he's sated. And now he washes again and eats a gazayas. Yeah? Like it's Erev Pesach Shalios B'Shabbos. We eat one meal after another, right? You take a break. So you just finished eating a meal. Let's say in the winter, the day's a short day. You eat lunch. Shalashodas is you're pretty much full from lunch. And now you wash for shalashodas and you eat a small amount of bread. When you finish that bread, that small amount of bread sates you. Right? Because you can't eat it anymore. You're really satisfied. You're only doing it because you have an obligation to eat shalashodas. The benching is a doraisa, although you only ate a gazayas.
Understood. You're already satiated from lunch. Doesn't even
Doesn't
matter.
make a difference from where you satiate.
Right.
It's a Torah obligation.
You're doing it for a mitzvah, right?
Right? Exactly. That's the difference. But if initially all you had was the gazayas or the beya, and you're not satisfied, that's rabbinical. So if you have a suffix Rabbanul. Okay, just go a little bit further. All blessings of eating, you first say a bracha and then you benefit. Right? It's well go birch. Okay. What about a person who wants to drink just an ounce of liquid? Not more than that, not a revius. Less than an ounce. Do you have to say a bracha? Any amount of food or drink you eat, you have to say a bracha. Eating a small amount of fruit, you have to say bracha. Small amount of fish or meat, you have to say a shackle. Because anything you benefit from through eating and drinking, you have to have that acknowledgement prior to partaking of that benefit.
Now, does the bracha achrona burn the fashos?
No bracha achrona. We're not talking bracha rishona.
I understand, but if you just had that little bit, do you?
No bracha achrona. No bracha achrona. No after bracha.
So the bracha achrona is also about being satiated.
No. You have to eat it. No, that's not the. You have to eat it. You have to eat a volume. The volume minimally you have to eat a kazayas. Drinking, you have to drink a revius.
We were just having this discussion on Shabbos with somebody that if you just you're a chef and you want to taste something just to make sure it's okay, and it's just a tiny bit, do you have to say bracha on that? And we said yes, you do, but you don't have to do a bracha because it has to be a certain amount of
Gemara says if you want to take medication, you want to drink water, and the water is not quenching your thirst. You're not thirsty, and you want to take a pill. Do you have to say a shackle on that water?
Technically, no, but you should because
no, you don't. You don't. You're not permitted. It's bracha levatolo.
Even though you
satisfy your thirst, you're not permitted to say bracha. But the Gemara says if it's any other liquid which has an innate taste to it, like you want to take your pill with a cup of juice,
right?
Out the juice, you have to say bracha, whether you're thirsty or not thirsty, because any other liquid other than water only has taste if you're thirsty. Any other liquid, because of its innate characteristic, it provides something whether you're interested or not interested.
So I would think if you're taking a pill on Shabbos and you're taking it and you're thirsty, but you're taking this pill because you need water to take the pill, I would think
you say a shackle about water.
You should say shackle, even though
definitely. But very often you wake up in the morning, you're not thirsty.
Right.
You have to take your medication. You take a few ounces of water to take your medication. You don't say bracha on that water.
Real quick before we end, Rabbi, if a person forgets to say Mashi Varoch Mereg Hashem, do you have to repeat Shemona Esrei?
Yes. But once you've said Mashi Varoch Mereg Hashem for 30 days, You don't, unless you know factually you forgot it. Because the presumption is that after a month, although you don't recall, probably you did say it. Because you're already conditioned to say it. But until a month passes, the presumption is you didn't say it because it's not your routine yet to say it at every Shmon Esrei.
Right.
Okay? Okay, we're going to stop here today. We'll continue tomorrow. Okay?
Thank you.
Be well, everybody. We have a Daf Yomi at 9:30 this morning. Aaron, Mark, good to see you again. Beth, welcome back. Okay, I'm going to stop.